Hey everybody, my name is Dan Shimolinski. People like to call me Chimy, and you can too. I am a bassist, sound designer, and composer living in Los Angeles, and today we are here checking out Icelandia. Now, it says that Icelandia is a synth, which is not inaccurate, but also very surface level for the amount of complexity that we have in this library. These sounds were definitely made with various synthesizers, analog and digital alike, but it really is kind of an homage to that Icelandic style of composing of sort of minimalist, is it acoustic, is it electronic, that kind of in-between zone that's just perfect for scoring. I'm really excited to show you what it can do. This is a huge library. There are over, I think, 50 parts here. I think something like 13 gigabytes of real-time samples. It's insane. We're barely going to scratch the surface, but I think I'm going to stop wasting time and get right to it. Now, for our more dedicated viewers, you might be scratching your head at this point going, hasn't he talked about this one already? Yes, this is a bit of a reprise because I did cover this library before, albeit under a different name, which unfortunately had to change. So we are back to look at it once again. And, you know, honestly, I don't mind. I could do probably 2 or 3, 4 tutorials, demonstrations on all of these libraries. You know, we really do just scratch the surface here. I'm going to try and do a little bit of a different thing here, but pretty much in terms of covering the parts and the programs, that bit will be fairly similar, but we'll definitely make a new one from scratch. I mean, we can do that every day, all day. As with all of the parts and libraries in Soundpaint, everything is labeled fairly as you'd expect it to be. You know, we have a series of pads here, hard and soft. Up here we have a couple atonal ones, delay ambient, delay tails high, delay tails low. As I'm going through these, I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense to me. That's what that sounds like to me. And I'm interested to hear if you think so as well. So let's start with this atonal part, which to me doesn't really sound all that atonal. There is still pitch to it. I'm gathering that this is one beautiful part that's kind of time stretched over the key bed, which is super useful for sound design and also just a great tool to kind of have within this library and also to just mix with other stuff. But this is the atonal part. That's a vibe. But you hear it's got some pitch to it. I mean, and it is time stretched, so, you know, as you get higher, it does get a little bit quicker. So you get your nice long rumblies down there and your kind of quicker hits up there. So that's a really, really useful starting sound. And one thing you'll notice about all of these parts is there's a lot of emphasis put on kind of this organicism, development, slow moving train kind of vibe where, you know, you can just kind of hold one key and really just set a scene, you know. And just let it go. I mean, we're that deep into the sample and there was already such a large change in the timbre of it. So slow moving, slow developing, really subtle kind of ominous sounds here. Then we've got this delay ambient sound. And again, delay, I'm gathering that means there's some kind of trail on it, or maybe there was some kind of external processing through a delay. But these sounds are definitely dark and definitely still in the ambient category. Play a couple of those for you. I looked down at the voice count. It said 51. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. It's better than most of this stuff can do. But yeah, that's really, really neat. So, atmospheric, ambient, that's the word for it. All of these keys, you could take one and time stretch it, one key stretched across the key bed. But I think there's tremendous value to instruments that are laid out in a way that makes sense. Every time I went for a low note to try and give some low rumbly sustenance to the sound, I definitely got that response. You're not going to find a lot of weirdly placed things in here. So that's something you can definitely play live along with a cue and just kind of create this awesome ambient underscore, put it through a nice big reverb and you're good to go. And then likewise, this says high and low. I did notice that these tend to be higher sounds, lower sounds for each part. So that all makes sense. That all checks out. This one I'll just play straight down for you and give you an idea what's there. I feel almost ashamed that I'm going through these so quickly because, the point is to have a long developing sound and, doing a second maybe on each of them, but just pick a random one. There you have it. I mean, yeah, that's a whole score in a box. And low, this is going to be kind of lower timbres, definitely a little bit darker, but still the same kind of general sound palette atmosphere as the other one. Sounds like double basses to me. I know I'm preconditioned to hear double basses everywhere, but that's what that sounds like to me. Man, what an awesome part. And then you get these pads, which, all kind of follow the same general format. There's a hard version and a soft version. I'm going to just demonstrate what one of those sounds like. Let's try pad 3. This is pad 3 hard. Tons of motion, very, very crisp and just beautifully sampled. And then let's check out the soft version just so you can hear what that kind of sounds like, that contrast. Yeah, so let's just A-B it real quick. Here's your hard, and here's your soft. So it sounds like there's a little bit of creative filtering happening there to just kind of darken it. I would love to talk to Trolls a little bit more about what was used to specifically process these. But if you're wondering, yes, these are all amazing. There's a lot here, and I could go through all of them, but I'd rather just kind of pick one at random and just see where we land. Let's try pad 5 soft. And let's put on a envelope with just a little bit of release so that it doesn't, hard cut off right away. Try a hard one. Let's do pad 8 hard. Sounds like strings to me. Does that sound like strings to you? That's just super, super cool. So that's what I'm talking about is like, clearly derived from like, okay, let's make a orchestrally string kind of thing, but it's this synth hard pad and it sounds great. I'll give you one more here before we dive into the programs. I really just am picking at random. They're all great and they all kind of sound within the same similar sound palette, definitely a collection that is from the same geographic region for sure. Let's check out pad 20 soft. So like, almost like an organ kind of sound there, but just beautiful. And I'm telling you, gotta trust me on this one. This whole library is like that. It's just beautiful, perfect, crispy patches. If you could really just like throw this through any amount of processing, blend it with maybe a piano or something, just be its own unique thing. But anyway, as always, let's check out the utilizations of these parts over in our program section. And we do have quite a fair amount here. I gotta say, it's pretty comprehensive. As I was going through these, I was thinking, yeah, that's this vibe and that's this vibe. And I'm like checking off the list, the mental checklist that I have. And you really are getting kind of the full checklist of scoring tools here, at least for this timbre. But let's check this one out. This one is called Atmosphere Beyond the Light. Gorgeous. Beautiful. That is such a nice patch. Let's check this out. So, okay, cool. That was the low pass cutoff to the CC, and then part volume as well. I'm noticing here that part 1 and 2 are kind of... We've got an ambient section here and a high section here, but when I pull the mod wheel all the way down, the higher stuff is actually at 0. And I really like to use this as I'm building compositional tools, within Soundpaint to try and bring out a higher sound with the raising of a mod wheel. And part volume is just a really easy way to do that. You can, of course, do it through filtering as well, which is also a part of this. But, sticking in a low layer that's kind of like a washy ambient thing, and then a higher one that comes up with the mod wheel, Soundpaint is just as much a performance tool as it is a compositional one. So definitely take advantage of your CC mapping. This one's called Atmosphere Imagination. I love that so much. I mean, you notice, like, I found the kind of the pedal point, and I was like, oh, this will just keep evolving and massaging my ears in wonderful ways, and didn't even touch the mod wheel, which of course is doing some awesome stuff. So let's at least peek at that. So again, we're seeing that principle of kind of bringing that overtone, that kind of harsher sound in with the CC1. Very cool. This is another atmosphere program. It's called 2 Parts Away. Little pitch wheel never hurts. And I'm noticing that the lower half of that, I think, is different than the upper half. So yes, so one thing that we can do in Soundpaint, which I always like to bring up, is you can really limit your key ranges here. So definitely gathering that the lower side is kind of this more atonal one note stretch thing here. The upper half is a little more tonal, kind of a shriller high kind of part. So super effective. Let's check out the note range of this one as well. So these two are kind of working together to kind of just be, dark delay ambient and just the atonal layer. And then this high delay tails part is covering the upper range. Very cool. And some good panning action happening as well. And our CCs are all mapped to different volume amounts here. And I did notice that the cutoff was kind of making it a little bit brighter as I was raising it. So this one's a little bit of a change of pace, as you can, I'm sure, see already, literally by the pace at which things are moving on my screen. But this is a epic part, and there are 3 of these here using morph, and it's got the ARP on. So this is a very different type of sound, but definitely shows you the full range of what Icelandia can do for you. Just because it's this kind of big, evolvey, pad monster type thing, doesn't also mean it can do things like this. Super awesome. And again, like, you know, what are each of these morph layers exactly doing? I'm not really not really sure. I guess we could turn the ARP off and find out just what it sounds like sustaining. Let's go one step further and even turn off all the effects and just hear the morph doing its thing. Oh, that is so, so cool. This is the epitome of just like, you know, little micro motions just kind of creating almost like a formant sound. I mean, you're getting just such visceral, alive, organic sounds happening here from these LFOs mapped to the morph. So, you know, that is just an awesome utilization of morph. I love stuff like this. Epic when you're holding down a pad, but even more epic when it's kind of just being this sort of, you know, behind the scenes motion happening in an ARP that just keeps your sequence feeling alive. This is called A Message for You. Gorgeous. Great use of the scatter delay, which is just, you know, as we look at our delays, like, you know, obviously this is the one that I was like, what is a scatter delay? Like, I knew obviously what a BBD delay. I knew, you know, modern digital, sure. Raindrop, I'd even heard of that, but scatter, this is just something I was not familiar with before Soundpaint, and it's just such a really interesting to just add this motion. And, you know, again, like, I think there's a temptation to keep delays limited to kind of pluckier sounds, but they can do some really, really magical things here when it comes to long evolving pads like that. And an interesting choice to put it after the analog filter. You could definitely put it before and kind of filter down the motion of the scatters, but that's really, really beautiful. Stunning, stunning program. Let's check out Blackout. Are you getting the picture? This is just such a beautiful, beautiful library. It's just like you can take all this stuff and stack it. And, you know, this is the epitome of just like stack me, please. You know, like pad 21, pad 20, pad 19 with, you know, delay tails, high, low. Just get it all in there, you know, put some range restrictions on it. Find your favorite note in these and one note stretch them. And you just get these beautiful instruments that just keep going. They just keep going. And so, you know, whether you're trying to do just a mellow ambient underscore, or you want to add kind of a layer of complexity, maybe some motion or some subtle electronic stuff to a, you know, acoustic instrument, this is just the way to go. Let's do one more before we go ahead and make our own sound. Let's try Last Chance. It was a real chill you just witnessed. Wow, that just, how moving and beautiful is that? I mean, it's like, what is that? What is that? That's like an organ combined with like strings combined with synth. It's just like this beautiful in-between sound that I think weirdly is familiar to all of us. Like, you know, that's very like interstellar-y sound, you know, maybe some like sensitive scenes in any modern, really cinematic score. This is your zone, you know? This is just such a sweet spot. That's kind of how I describe this library to people, is one giant sweet spot, you know. It's just like everything is just like right in there. It's so perfect. Let's go ahead and use that sweet spot to make a program from scratch. You know, I think the last time I looked at this library, I was pretty invested in making like a big, slow, evolving pad. We've just listened to a lot of those. I'd almost be more interested in trying to create something that could be perceived as kind of an orchestral string sound, but very clearly isn't. You know, I think there's something inherent about the timbre of strings that just allows for this beautiful bass for whatever you're trying to do. You know, if you can make a really good string patch, be it on, you know, that or this, or, you know, with an orchestra, it's going to allow you to basically paint in between the layers that kind of naturally exist with just the timbre of strings. And so let's create a really, really good string foundation. Something that we could just, you know, definitely is going to have some motion to it, but is going to have enough space that I think, you know, you'd be able to kind of paint in a little bit more of your narrative shaping instruments. So where do we start? Let's go ahead and start poking around, see if we can find some stringy stuff. So my first instinct is to maybe start with the delay tails high, because that's kind of, you know, upper register sounding stuff. I'm imagining we're gonna hopefully find something that we can one note stretch in here. Don't mind me while I just poke around on the keyboard here and see what I can find. What is that one? Hold on. E5. I'm interested. Am I crazy, or does that kind of sound like a tremolo string kind of thing? Obviously, we are dealing with a time factor here. It does get time stretched, but that could work. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued enough to keep it there and keep searching, but I think if we filter that down and maybe put it through a giant reverb, put a nice little envelope on it, let's definitely get our ADSR queued up here, because I think that's going to be the secret to this. Let's take a little journey here, but I'm optimistic. And by the way, I don't like really pre-plan this. I want to explore with the viewer so you can see both my successes and my struggles. So I'm not opposed to changing that, but let's have that be a starting place. And then I'm going to go ahead and just mute it and start digging around for something else that kind of is going to maybe complement that. There was a pad in here when I was going through the parts that did specifically remind me of string sounds. Was it 6? It definitely sounds like strings, but I don't like that. Why not both? ¿Por qué no los dos? Let's try this. Ah, the heavens, they open. That is pretty neat. So now the big question is, does that work with our first part? Let's go ahead and bring them in the same octave. Oh, this is is going to be good. This is going to be good. I'm excited. Okay, before we start shaping, before we start doing mixed stuff, before we do some more envelope work here, I want to grab something from the ambient section, because I think there's going to be kind of a wispy noise area kind of type thing that we could bring in here that could really take this to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and do dark delay ambient. And let me just poke around here for a second. Does that sound like tremoloing strings far away to you? I don't know. Are you with me on this? Am I totally just losing my mind? It's like a very airy, wispy kind of sounding thing. Okay, cool. I'm happy with, I've got 4 parts in here. Let's start dealing with them. So when I get into this zone of just like, I try to kind of pull myself back and say, okay, let me deal with my layers one by one. So the 2 most substantial sounds are part 2 and 4. They complement each other. They're very strong. They're pads. So, that would make sense. So I'm going to deal with them first. I'm going to do just a little bit of gain staging, bring these down to about the same volume. Oh, here's a good little tip. If you didn't know, if you hold down Control, you can fine tune your settings here. So if I want that right at -4 dB, for a while you're going to be like, oh, I can't really nail it. If you hold down Control, look at that. All this fine level control. That's close enough for me. So yeah, we got these 2 down there. And let's go ahead and just do a little pan left right action. And let's just see what these 2, remind ourselves what these 2 sound like together. They sound awesome. Let's go ahead and do, now for this, I'm just gonna do a very modest slow attack here, full sustain. I'm gonna say around a second of release for each. And you're going to see here in a second how this really comes to life. Just 2 parts and some ADSR, and it already sounds like strings to me. I mean, we could stop there, but I have the too much gene, so we're going to have to keep going. But let's go ahead and just see what each of those are doing for us. So part 2, definitely very airy, and part 4 I feel like has a little more body. So I'm actually going to bring up the volume of part 2 because I feel like that needs a little more support. And I'm going to really lean into what it's doing for us. I'm going to bring our tone knob on the high side. Oh my gosh, I was adjusting part 3. Why didn't you guys tell me? Come on. No, I was definitely doing part 3 by accident here. Sorry, guys. Let's do this. So part 4, yeah. I try and match like parts to similar effects. I really hope at some point Soundpaint allows you to copy and paste envelopes to other parts, because that would be a great way to get exactly the numbers that you have. Oh yeah. And just that little tone adjustment, I don't know if you hear that, but it really does some interesting things to the stereo field because we've got these panned in different directions. Cool. To me, that's our bread and butter layer right there. I think we can write home with that one, and let's try this crazier, more experimental one. Now, it is a tremolo-ish kind of sound, but it does have that kind of industrial, almost ring mod-y kind of sound to it. So we're not going to want this too loud, and we might want to do some clever things here with the tone. And I'm going to bring that attack even more up. Oh, yeah. And I don't like it hanging out too much up there. Let's find a good sustain point for it. Yeah. So rather than grabbing your master volume, you can use sustain points in the ADSR to kind of musically find a way in which it's going to find its way back down. And now, of course, we have to adjust our decays to tell Soundpaint how long we want it to take to get to that point. And I'm thinking something around 2 seconds. Well, that's perfect. That just swells, kind of, you know, gives a little kiss to the climax of it, and then just comes down and settles a little bit. That's ideal to me. And then in terms of our panning, you know, because it's swelling, because this is our swell layer, I think we could possibly just put an LFO on that pan and just kind of have it goose slowly a small amount of the stereo image here. Yeah, that looks good. Let's see what it sounds like. Is it an orchestra? Is it synthesizers? Question of the day. I love it. That's really, really nice. So I would even just, let's bump it up just a touch. I really like what it's doing. And then, yeah, this ambient layer. So when I put this in here, my original thought was just get something. Let's turn these guys off and just remind ourselves what it is. Here we go. Yeah. All right. So I don't, maybe we don't do this. What was my idea with this? I wanted it to be just kind of like a airy background. So maybe we do like the longest attack and maybe a super long decay to basically a 0 point. We're experimenting. We're experimenting. So that's cool. I think this could be cool if it was just in there a little tiny bit. Are y'all rocking with that? Do you like it? Is it a little too harsh? Maybe I can bring the tone down just a touch. You guys notice that there's like a little natural resonance point to the tone filter? It's cool. It's super effective in some regards, but it is a little all or nothing. So I actually like that, and I want to make it going panning. This is going to be the most extreme panning situation. I'm going to do an LFO. We're going to go 2, and I want it to be a little bit faster than the other one. Not a ton faster. You don't want to overdo this kind of stuff because then it's like, you know, we are trying to make a mellow pad here. So if you hold down, it's like, then, you know, it's going to just sound annoying. Let's go ahead and do a 90% spread. Just hear what that sounds like. It's too annoying. See what I mean? It was like, so let's in this case, I'll just pull back the amount because I'm too lazy to dial in the exact, I guess that frequency needs to be a little slower. I don't even remember what the other frequency was. This might even be slower. I'm not really sure. That's cool. I think the decay is even a little too short. maybe not down to a 0 point, but let's find a spot that works for us. There's cool. Yeah. Let's just check in on where we are without even having touch effects. This is just 4 parts, a little bit of panning action happening, some gain staging, and some ADSR. And I think you'll be surprised by how good this sounds. Sounds like strings to me. That is awesome. Okay, one thing I'm noticing is this layer here. Let's go back and reevaluate that real quick. When I give it a little more velocity, it feels like the decay and attack are actually too short. Or mainly just the decay, actually. So I'm going to make that just a little bit longer. And remember, we do have panning motion in there. One thing to note is, when you get left-right action happening and you're automating that, it can affect how your envelopes are perceived. So that's just one little adjustment I wanted to make. But aside from that, I'm so glad we did that. I know it was a weird starting place, guys, but like, that's where all our meat is coming from. A little bit of air with that third part. I like how subtle it is right now. I'm not going to touch that. That's actually something that I think is going to really pop off when we get a reverb going here. I think it's effects time. Do you guys think it's effects time? Let's do it. I know we could do a lot of stuff here with maybe automating the pitch so that it has like a little bit of an LFO. But as I said, when I set out to do this, I really wanted to say, that this is like a underscore, meant to leave air, meant to leave space. I think any good string program is one that just gives you the ability to build and build and build and stack and, give space in between. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and do an EQ here real quick because I just want to make sure that we don't have any frequency buildup happening that I'm not aware of. Before a reverb, before a delay, any of that stuff, I want to just make sure that my tough spots are not too build-uppy. And those tough spots really typically only live in a handful of places. I find that really most often in like this 350 register, there can just be all this mud. And so, I like to do kind of a fine cue and play just like a low cluster and bring the gain up just to see what's there. It's not too bad. Maybe bring it down just a touch. Weirdly, I kind of like that. Is that weird? I'm going to just see what a cut around that region would do and maybe make the band even a little bit finer. But I don't want to lose too much bass, so I'm going to grab this guy down here and just give a boost right around the 120 region. I'm going to see what's happening over here. Same deal. then I'm going to counter that with a little bit of sweetness around 2K. That's always a fun spot for me. And then a sanity check, which is just basically hold a chord. Oh, you know, why not? I mean, it's string sounds, right? So let's do just a touch of a high shelf. You know what's crazy? That third layer, that kind of higher sound, almost sounds like we have a shimmer reverb, like the pitch mix happening, but there's no reverb on here yet. So that's cool. That's doing something interesting for me. But yeah, let's just go ahead and try this whole thing. That's working for me. It's a little bit of a different harmonic profile than we had. It's bringing out a little more of the mid-range, cutting some of that mud, but also keeping the bass really present. So I'll leave that in there. That works for me. One thing I actually kind of want to mess around with is that program that we were looking at really inspired me to just mess around with the scatter delay on a longer pad like this. And you know what? I'm going to just go ahead and try some of these guys. I like that. That's a good starting place. A little bit of modulation happening. We've got per round. So this is interesting. So feedback fade type per tap or per round of taps. So basically the fade, do you want it to happen per round? So basically like every time it comes around, is it going to fade, or per tap? And we have per round selected here. I think per tap is going to be more of the sound. Yeah. And this reverse is, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Doesn't that third layer sound like the pitch mix of shimmer reverb? I think that's so cool. So I don't think we can use shimmer, but let's go ahead. One trick that I have done before, which just always is just kind of a nice little chef's kiss, is to grab our stereo imaging tool here, make it just a little bit wider, and then rotation, put an LFO on that. This is just a great way to kind of take your master and just give it some last final touch of subtle motion, because, you know, with all of this stuff, you know, at its core, all of the Icelandia parts have motion and development in them. But if you add a little bit more motion, just kind of goose a little bit of the stereo image, this is a little extreme in terms of speed. Let's slow that guy down and maybe even lessen the amount just a touch. And then let's do a nice straight ahead, clean Lexi reverb. I have no desire to get into the fancier stuff. This is just, these are such beautiful parts. Let's find a profile here that works. Big bright hall could be cool. You guys, I think we're done. I think we're done. Let's check it out. That's pretty epic, right? I mean, to me, that's just like the epitome of scoring. As a bass player, what drew me to scoring was, a lot of the same things I use in the mentality of playing bass in an ensemble I can use in scoring. As a bass player, when you're dealing with saxophonists and, all these other ensemble players, you're kind of painting and supporting a narrative, right? You're ebbing when they're flowing and you're yinning when they're yanging. And, it's just something that I really enjoy, kind of orchestrating a band and just being the support of a narrative for a soloist or for a instrument. And for scoring, you're essentially doing the same thing. It's just that you're supporting a visual narrative and your palette goes from one instrument to endless. And making sounds like this just really kind of makes my heart sing because, it's something that's familiar. It's definitely, evokes an emotion. And, we have all this motion in here happening, as I always say, more motion, the more emotion. I've never said that once, but I've said it now. So you've got all these kind of moving parts and these beautifully sampled things that just really are meant to kind of sort of be like, is that strings? Is that not? This can totally nail the role of an orchestra, but in a modern scoring context. And I think that's really the interesting thing that you're getting here with Icelandia is just a collection of beautifully tailored sounds for those, in the familiar vein, but definitely has a little bit of sparkle, modern flair, and just is going to basically crush any score that you're working on. So again, as I always say, we scratched the surface here. Really, you could go so deep with here. We used basically 2 pads out of 50 almost, like it really gets deep, and you can, your palette for sounds is just endless here, and then you start working in these ambient and delay stuff, and it's just like, you're set. You're so set. So I do encourage you to pick this one up if scoring is something that you do, or you want to get more into, or you want to really just try and expand the sounds of whatever you're composing or producing. This is going to give you that fresh, kind of familiar, but completely new and revolutionary sound that just, is going to light up anything that you're doing. So that's all I have for you today. And thanks so much for taking a journey with me. And I hope to see you again soon. This is Chimy, signing out. Take care.